Mike Tindall has followed in Prince Harry's footsteps with a book announcement. Zara Tindall's husband has revealed he's written a second book with his podcast co-hosts Alex Payne and James Haskell. The trio, who present The Good, The Bad and The Rugby podcast, announced the news on social media earlier today. Their new book, titled The Good, The Bad and The Rugby, untold, follows the success of their first publication, Unleashed, which was released last year. Mike, 46, is following in his wife's cousin's footsteps after the Duke of Sussex, 40, released a tell-all memoir in 2023 titled Spare. The former rugby player's announcement promised the new book will be bigger, bolder, more personal than ever. The book draws on nearly 60 years of combined rugby experience between the three authors. According to the announcement, the book will reveal the personal, the vulnerable, and the downright absurd from their rugby careers. The authors promise to share raw, real, and ridiculous rugby stories, laid bare. The book's description indicates it will cover the highs, the heartbreaks, the hangovers, and focus on previously untold stories. It promises to detail the days you've never heard about, the games that mean the most to them, and the dramas they'd almost forgotten. The 288-page book will also feature stories about heroes who did things that are best forgotten, whilst celebrating their enduring love for the wonderful game of rugby. The book will be released on November 6 and is currently available for pre-order. The hardcover edition is priced at £22, whilst the digital Kindle version costs £14.99. In their social media announcement, the authors urged fans to pre-order now via the link in bio and get ready to go deeper into the world of rugby than ever before. This time, it's personal. The book is available for pre-order on Amazon and will span 288 pages in both hardcover and digital formats. Mike Tindall sat at his oak desk in the corner of the Gloucestershire home he shared with his wife, Zara, and their 3 children. The summer evening sunlight streamed through the large windows, glinting off framed photos of his rugby glory days and candid family moments. Yet tonight, he wasn't thinking about matches won or the time he lifted the Webb Ellis Cup. His thoughts were elsewhere, on vulnerability, storytelling, and the strange twist of fate that had made him a published author once again. He glanced at the manuscript lying beside him, the working title boldly typed across the cover page. The Good, The Bad and The Rugby. untold. It was official now. Announced, promoted, and available for pre-order. But it hadn't always been so straightforward. In truth, the journey to untold had been a deeply personal one that echoed another royal story that had rocked the world not long before. When Prince Harry released Spare, Mike had read it cover to cover, like many others. He hadn't rushed to judge his cousin-in-law. Family politics aside, Mike could understand the cathartic urge to tell one's story. Rugby, like royalty, came with its own script, glory, pressure, media scrutiny. And Mike had played both games, albeit very differently. But he also knew that honesty could be messy, healing could be painful, and stories, once told, took on lives of their own. So when Alex Payne, his longtime friend and podcast co-host, first brought up the idea of a second book, Mike had hesitated. Contents, James Haskell had chimed in during one recording of The Good, The Bad and The Rugby. We've got so many more stories, the ones we didn't dare put in the first one. Mike laughed at the memory now. Of course, Haskell wanted to tell all. That was his way. Brash, bold, unfiltered. But Alex had leaned in with a more serious tone. I think people want the truth, Mike. Not just the funny anecdotes and the pitch banter. They want to know who we were behind the jerseys, what we sacrificed, what we lost and gained. Mike had leaned back in his chair that day and stayed quiet a little too long. Then he'd said, "All right, but this time it's got to be real. No polishing, no pretending. If we're doing this, we're doing it all the way." And they had. The first blow, people forget that rugby breaks you in more ways than one, Mike had written in one of the book's opening chapters. Not just your body, but your identity, your sense of worth. You learn to play through pain, and not just the visible kind. He described in painful detail a concussion that had left him dazed during a Six Nations match, the hours afterward a blur. His teammates thought he was fine. He thought he was fine. He played on, but days later, at home, he found himself unable to focus, irritable with his kids, waking up in sweats. "I didn't tell Zara the worst of it," he admitted in the book. "She had her hands full already, and I wasn't ready to be seen as broken." But that chapter wasn't just about physical trauma. It was a window into the emotional isolation elite athletes often experience, the pressure to perform, the reluctance to show weakness. And through it all, the unspoken brotherhood of rugby, where vulnerability was often hidden beneath bruised ribs and bravado. The royals and the rucks, of course, readers would be drawn to the royal angle. That was inevitable. And Mike didn't shy away from it. In a chapter playfully titled Palace Etiquette and Post-Match Pints, he recanted what it was like to attend Buckingham Palace, events fresh off a muddy pitch. "I remember once rocking up late to a formal dinner with Zara," he wrote. "I'd just come from training and still had grass in my ears. Her Majesty gave me a look that said, 'You're lucky you married my granddaughter.'" But the chapter went deeper too, reflecting on what it meant to be in the public eye, not just as an athlete, but as a husband to a royal. He spoke of his immense respect for the Queen, of finding surprising common ground between monarchy and rugby, tradition, discipline, duty. And then, of course, he addressed Spear, without bitterness, but with honesty. "I didn't agree with everything Harry wrote," he admitted, "but I understood why he wrote it. We all have our battles, and sometimes the only way out is through. James and the Japanese tattoo. One of the most absurd, and now viral, chapters of UNLCKED featured James Haskell getting a kanji tattoo during a tour in Tokyo, thinking it meant strength and courage, only to discover later it translated roughly to noodle warrior. "I laughed so hard I nearly popped a rib," Mike recalled. But that was James, always 100% in, even when he had no idea what he was doing. The chapter had fans in stitches, but it also revealed something deeper, the camaraderie that made the worst travel days bearable, the ridiculous dares that formed lifelong memories, the shared identity of men constantly on the move, playing a sport that both united and devoured them. A father's fear, perhaps the most touching part of the book, came in a quieter chapter where Mike recounted the birth of his daughters and the complicated emotions that followed. "I remember holding Mia for the first time and thinking, how can I protect you from a world I don't fully understand?" He wrote, "I've been hit by the biggest lads in the world, but nothing prepared me for the fear of fatherhood." He opened up about the challenge of transitioning from professional sport into real life, where there were no match schedules, no physios to fix your pain, no teammates to celebrate or mourn with, just silence, diapers, and the occasional identity crisis. "I missed the adrenaline," he admitted. "I missed the structure. But mostly, I missed knowing exactly who I was." That chapter alone struck a chord with many readers. Not just rugby fans, but new fathers, veterans, retirees, anyone who had ever been forced to reinvent themselves. Promotion and press. As the release date neared, Mike found himself thrust into the media circuit once again. Morning shows, interviews, podcasts beyond his own. And with each appearance, the question returned, are you following Prince Harry's lead? Mike would chuckle and give his well-rehearsed response. Well, I'm not moving to California anytime soon. But look, Harry told his story. This is ours. Different pitch, different stakes. Still, the comparisons lingered. Privately, though, Mike respected what Harry had done. In fact, he'd reached out before the announcement of untold more out of courtesy than necessity. Harry had responded warmly. Write your truth, mate, the message had read. The world needs more of that. Book launch. November 6, the launch event was held in London at a cosy venue off Soho, packed with fans, fellow athletes, and a handful of royals who came quietly, without fuss. Zara stood beside Mike, glowing with pride, while Alex and James hammed it up for the cameras. When Mike took the mic, he was uncharacteristically serious. This book isn't just about rugby, he said. It's about what it means to fall, to get up, and to laugh at yourself in between. It's about friendship, failure, and forgiveness of others and yourself. The crowd applauded, and as the night wore on, readers lined up for signed copies. Some brought their kids, some wore Old England jerseys. Some just wanted to say thank you. You made me feel seen, one man whispered. Like it's okay to struggle, even if you're supposed to be the strong one. That, Mike thought later, was worth more than any bestseller list.